everyone. Josh with Severe Weather, Tuesday, May 21st. Some major severe weather coming. We are going to talk about that and then kind of take a look at the tropics here towards the end of the video. But a strong storm system heading to the northern plains is going to produce hurricane-like winds for a good chunk of the upper Midwest, with the threat for a few stronger tornadoes. Not officially a hurricane, but it's going to have kind of the appearance of one. As we have what sometimes happens this time of the year is we get kind of an inland hurricane, a mesoscale convective system that produces a lot of straight line wind damage, embedded tornadoes, and large hail with it. The area under the gun stretches from Missouri to southern Minnesota and southwestern Wisconsin. The area of greatest concern will be across central and eastern Iowa this afternoon, and continuing maybe into western Illinois and south central Wisconsin this evening. That threat for severe weather continues tomorrow and into the day Thursday, especially farther south over the south central states from North Texas into southern Missouri, maybe into the lower Ohio Valley. There'll be some threat for some severe weather as well across the Great Lakes into the Northeast, but the worst of it is expected to be in this area I've got highlighted here. So I'm going to talk about the setup for this severe weather. We've got ourselves a very powerful storm system here. You can kind of see on our water vapor already severe weather has been ongoing through the night across parts of Nebraska, now stretching into Iowa. This is on the front end of a negatively tilted trough. Now, as the day wears on, we've got yet another trough in here that's going to round this base here and move through the same area. And as winds aloft pick up, as instability picks up, we are likely going to see what can be a pretty significant outbreak of severe weather once again. It's been a very busy stretch of weather over the last month. There's no reason to believe that this system here can't perform in the same way. So multiple pieces of energy swinging through, but this is the one right here that as it moves into this section during the day today, we are going to see more storms firing up and into a very unstable environment. There are some potential, I want to call them fail modes to this, in that we may have somewhat limiting factors in getting major supercells going due to the early morning storms that we're dealing with. But nonetheless, as the winds aloft strengthen, I do think this is going to turn into a pretty significant outbreak. We have this southern piece of energy across the Pacific here that's been with us pretty much throughout the winter and spring. That is going to continue to fuel a southern mode of this system as well. Maybe not so much today, but as we head more into tomorrow evening and into the day on Thursday as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Yesterday, severe weather hammered portions of Michigan, Illinois, and even southwest Ontario. There'll be somewhat of a resurgence as that area tracks eastward into upstate New York, into northern New England, into the St. Lawrence Valley here this afternoon, but I don't think we're going to be looking at anything like what the plains will be dealing with here today. Here's a look at the NAM upper level pattern. This is 30,000 feet above the ground, 20 to 30,000 feet above the ground. You can see the darkening colors here indicating stronger wind flow here around lunchtime today, 80 to 90 knots, which is over 100-mile-per-hour winds in some areas. And this is going to line up very efficiently with our storm system across Iowa and northern Missouri. Efficient's not what we like to hear, by the way, if we're looking at severe weather. A very potent trough system here that is continuing to swing northeastward, weakening some by the time we get later into the evening as it lifts up into Wisconsin and maybe the UP of Michigan. But one thing you'll see here is that we see these lines, these isobars tightening up, indicating strengthening aloft of the system. And that is much like a hurricane that's coming on shore, the Gulf or the Southeast, kind of the same deal, only a subtropical process here, or a non-tropical process. But as these winds tighten up, we do see intensification of the storms. And sadly, that's not going to be it. There's another piece of energy behind it that is going to move through the area tomorrow. Not going to trigger severe weather in the same place, but south and east of it, we have increasing wind flow across places like Oklahoma and the Ozarks region of Arkansas, Missouri, maybe southern Illinois. So more severe weather farther south, albeit not going to be as extreme as what we're dealing with later today. And that threat for severe weather shifts eastward. We may see some rougher weather on Thursday across parts of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but the southern tail of it is going to get some bit of a kick in the pants from this next trough swinging by, and I think we see a third day, well, really a fourth day, fifth day, if you look back at what happened Sunday in Kansas, fifth straight day of potentially intense storms a little bit farther south here in the southern plains. So a very active week ahead here. Here's a look at our storm fuel. This is convective available potential energy, abbreviated as CAPE, and it is very big here over portions of Oklahoma and Missouri. You can kind of see the surges of oranges, and they get all the way up into southeast Missouri here this afternoon, and then fade as we get into the evening. But it just regenerates again tomorrow afternoon, farther south across Oklahoma, North Texas, Arkansas. And we see it happen again on Thursday. Pretty common for late May, but nonetheless concerning for those residents that live in that area. So right now we're at level 4 out of 5, moderate risk for severe weather, a very big area that, by the way, is under a moderate risk. If you go back to December 2022, this area got hit by a derecho and wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. That was a moderate risk day. Not saying we're going to see the exact same thing today, but it does have some similarities to it. And the enhanced risk surrounding it gets all the way back to Omaha, all the way up to Green Bay and to the southern half of Lake Michigan, crossing the Chicagoland area, Peoria, Springfield, down to just north and west of St. Louis, Jefferson City, KC in that enhanced risk. The Twin Cities could end up getting there. Right now, we're just south and east of you, though. But we may even see severe weather early tonight in western lower Michigan, an area that's been getting hit quite a bit here this month of May. But we're not done after today. We do have a risk for strong tornadoes anywhere in this hatched area. Greatest risk across Iowa, the western portions of Illinois, southwest Wisconsin, far southeast Minnesota, and the northern third of Missouri. Kansas does have a risk for a few tornadoes, as does eastern Nebraska. And even down in Oklahoma, northwestern Arkansas this evening. Don't go to bed thinking you're not going to be at risk, because I do think we could see some rough weather with potential tornadoes. Bigger area of severe wind. This has kind of the look of a derecho, at least the way it's outlined. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll be one. Nonetheless, it's going to be a destructive complex of storms that forms this afternoon and advances east. And there could be significant wind all the way to Lake Michigan, all the way to Milwaukee, Racine, Chicago, Waukegan, even down maybe far northwestern Indiana, places like LaPorte, perhaps even South Bend, that area, by the time we get into this evening. So as you go to bed tonight, make sure you have ways to receive warnings, as we could still have some ongoing severe weather heading into this evening. Big hail, especially at the onset of our storm development this afternoon over southwestern and central portions of Iowa, northwestern portions of Missouri. And I would not be shocked if this purple area extended back into eastern Nebraska, areas that have been hit so much over the last month. I don't see why not. The pattern is repeating itself. I'll show you the forecast radar in a little bit. I do want to talk about tomorrow here. As the front gets itself to the Great Lakes and down into the Mid-South, we are going to continue to see severe weather. I don't think it's going to look exactly like today, fortunately, but we do have a slight risk all the way up to Syracuse, New York, down through lower Ontario, eastern and central portions of Ohio, Cincinnati, Louisville, Paducah, Owensboro, and an enhanced risk farther south all the way into North Texas, where our threat for tornadoes is going to climb late tomorrow into tomorrow evening. That could happen all the way back to the Big Sky country around San Angelo, the Metroplex, especially North Texas and surrounding portions of southern and eastern Oklahoma. And much of Arkansas and southern Missouri will have a risk for tornadoes later tomorrow. There's an even bigger risk for severe wind, a 30% chance across this area. And it's possible we could see this even climb tomorrow if certainty grows in our forecast. Somewhere in this area, we could end up going closer to moderate risk. I'm not exactly sure just yet. Right now, the models aren't indicating that, but it's certainly something to think about at this point. And big hail will certainly be a threat as well later in the day into the nighttime, all the way into the Ozarks, all the way back to San Angelo and Abilene, Texas. We'll see the main piece of energy lifting away. There's another one coming on Thursday, another area of slight risk that certainly could get an upgrade. Oklahoma is going to be the area under the gun, northeast Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth, Little Rock, maybe Shreveport and Bossier City, all the way up to Springfield, Joplin, and maybe including the same areas that got hit on Sunday, central and eastern portions of Kansas. Marginal risk goes up into Nebraska, by the way. Looking at the east, I've already kind of shown you guys a moderate risk, but don't ignore the threat for potentially severe weather again in portions of New England. That includes upstate New York, goes all the way up into central Maine. And the Storm Prediction Center doesn't forecast for Canada, but Montreal, Quebec City, Sherbrooke, those areas do have the risk for some severe weather later today as well. Tomorrow, that wave moves away. It'll weaken. The next wave moves in. This is the actual cold front. There will be a threat for some severe weather around Toronto, Mississauga, Hamilton, those areas, certainly Western New York, Northwestern Pennsylvania, all the way to about State College, Pittsburgh, Altoona, parts of West Virginia could see some severe weather towards the evening. Again, Ohio is under the gun, and don't take this for granted if you're in Ohio. We've seemed to overachieve quite a bit with the tornadoes. This certainly has the look of at least a wind damage event, but maybe a few tornadoes as well. And then this will shift east and weaken on Thursday. It's going to be a toasty day on Thursday, so there will be enough instability for storms to get going earlier in the afternoon. And there wouldn't be a complete shock to me if we ended up going to a slight risk, probably somewhere in the Delaware Valley and into the DC, DMV areas, all the way down towards maybe Richmond. Farther south, that risk lessens across North Carolina, but we aren't certainly going to avoid everything. So let's take a look at kind of region by region what this shapes out to be. This is this morning, rough weather moving through Nebraska and into Iowa. You can see kind of the beginning of what's going to be a pretty active day over Minnesota. But as we get into the afternoon, our cyclone deepens and moves northeast, takes on the shape of what looks like a strong tropical storm or hurricane, at least on the satellite imagery. It won't actually be classified one, of course, but definitely one where if you're in this southeastern portion of the storm center, you are under the gun for what's going to be some very intense weather. That's going to lift up into Ontario tomorrow morning. There'll actually be snow up there, some cold rain over northern Minnesota. But where it's hot, where this front cuts through this heat here tomorrow afternoon, we are going to see additional storms firing up. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we will see those firing up by the afternoon and continuing into the evening in Texas and Oklahoma. Things do weaken some as they move south and east, but where this front lines up right in here, we are going to continue to see the focus for more showers and storms. When I mentioned inland hurricane, I wasn't kidding, unfortunately. Take a look at some of these wind gusts as we get into this afternoon. This is lunchtime, but take a look at this afternoon. We see a huge area of wind gusts that may get up close to 100 miles per hour. The HRRR model is going 110 miles per hour as the ceiling for intense wind, and that doesn't include any tornadoes. So a very intense derecho-like complex expected to form here in the wake of this morning's storms. The areas of greatest concern are eastern Iowa, southwestern Wisconsin, maybe far northwestern Illinois, but they extend quite a bit all the way back into Iowa. If I zoom in here and show you guys Iowa, there we go. You can see, despite the fact that the storms get going early in the day, the area likely to see the most widespread wind damage from what we call a QLCS, quasi-linear convective system, shapes up like a line but has some bends in it, is actually going to be over eastern Iowa, closing in on the Mississippi River. And that's where that 111 mile per hour maximum wind is being output by this model. Doesn't mean necessarily that's exactly what's going to happen, but certainly the framework is there for an intense wind event and some tornadoes as well. There's strong wind shear involved with this. Not off the charts, but it is growing as the afternoon wears on. You can see the whites indicating a favorable parameter for some larger tornadoes. We're probably going to see multiple tornado warnings, at least a dozen of them, I would imagine. Keep an eye on what's going on here in Wisconsin as well. And farther south into Missouri, we will be under the gun. But the trend will be for weakening as the night wears on. It doesn't mean there's no chance for tornadoes tonight after we get dark, but the chance is going to lower. But keep an eye on things in Wisconsin and Illinois, maybe Western Michigan overnight tonight. Don't go to sleep without having a way to get your warnings. Here's a look at where the updraft helicity is greatest. This is where the winds will be rotating in the atmosphere. The strongest, much of Iowa under the gun, southeastern Wisconsin, all the way into southeast Minnesota. Sorry about that. All the way into northwestern Wisconsin, over to places like Wausau, Stevens Point, down to close to Madison, Wisconsin, even Green Bay and the Apple Valley and Fox Valley are under the gun here. Not Fox Valley, Apple Valley are under the gun for potentially rotating storms this afternoon into this evening. Here's what one of our models shows as far as what it's going to look like on radar. Multiple waves advancing, which could be severe through the early to mid-afternoon. A bigger wave that we have to watch moving through Iowa late in the afternoon, moving all the way down into northern Missouri. And this is a very impressive looking wave of storms that tracks through the Mississippi River area by 7 o'clock tonight, continuing into northeastern Wisconsin and even upper Michigan early this evening before beginning to weaken. And then that moves out of here, and things are definitely going to be quieter for this area tomorrow as it gets much colder. Nebraska's had severe weather this morning. We'll see additional storms firing up east of Lincoln this afternoon, Sioux City, Omaha, all the way to St. Joe's. Your timeline is going to be somewhere between 1 and 3 o'clock where you're likely going to get hit before things quiet down, and then quieter weather expected for a little bit here tomorrow into early on Thursday. Iowa is where kind of our ground zero is expected to be here this afternoon. Take a look at these storms. Again, don't get too complacent on where exactly the model shows it. It's just a forecast, but you get the feel here for what's going to be a damaging wind event with embedded tornadoes and very large hail, much like we saw a few weeks ago at the end of April across this area. We get a break tomorrow, and it turns a lot cooler after that. Minnesota is going to see its probably first real significant outbreak of severe weather, especially Twin Cities, south and east, Rochester over to Eau Claire, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. Even Mankato is under the gun. The northern half of the state will just have a cold rain and perhaps some very heavy rain, but this is a very dynamic storm system. Wisconsin will also see some severe weather here. We're going to get some rough storms this morning from La Crosse to Stevens Point, and then a break. More storms in the early afternoon, and then the main event comes around 4 to 6 o'clock, Eau Claire, all the way up close to Wausau, Stevens Point. This could be a damaging northern end of a derecho, all the way to the Wausau area and into northern Wisconsin. And it's going to move very quickly, perhaps at 80 miles per hour, racing into the UP of Michigan by about 10 or 11 o'clock before things do finally quiet down after that. On the southern tail, we are going to see some intense storms, probably some stronger tornadoes in northern Missouri, big hail, and of course, locally damaging winds all the way down to Joplin and northeast Oklahoma by 6 or 7 o'clock, approaching St. Louis around 10 or 11 o'clock tonight, and then moving away. More storms over the southern portion of the state. Let me move my screen down so you can see those. I-44 corridor may light up as soon as 1 or 2 in the afternoon tomorrow, and then things will shift away from this area by evening hours tomorrow. In Illinois, we are likely going to see more severe weather, a lot like yesterday, but later on in the day. The difference here is that we are losing the heating of the day after 9, 10 o'clock, but we aren't losing the dynamics necessarily. So keep an eye on things around Peoria, Springfield, even all the way up to Rockford and DeKalb, and then approaching Chicago tonight around 10 or 11 o'clock. I do think these storms weaken, but this model could certainly be underdone. They could hold together a little stronger depending on how things get going and how much lift we still have in the atmosphere. The good news is that things do fade as the night wears on. The bad news is that more storms could be generated down around the Ohio River. Not as big a threat, though. Here's another model. This is the NAM, but kind of the same feel here. You can see things weaken for the most part later on this evening. We still have storms, though, to keep an eye on tomorrow. As they fire up along our front, we will have some tornado potential, but more likely hail and powerful winds anywhere from western New York right on down into northwest Tennessee and southern portions of Missouri. This is tomorrow evening here. Waves continue to move along this area. Some flash flooding will be possible. Thursday, more storms across some of the same areas, unfortunately, and that includes West Virginia as well. Mid-Atlantic, quiet and warm today and most of the day tomorrow. Thursday is our day, I think, where we potentially have some rougher storms. This model stops at 2 o'clock, so likely our chance is going to be later afternoon into the first part of the nighttime. In the Northeast, we're going to see some rough weather on the northern end of this heat. As we get into the afternoon, upstate New York into western New England could have some hail, some locally strong winds. Same for southeast Ontario and southeastern Quebec. Tomorrow, we are going to get kind of a break for a little bit before more storms flare up and move through in the afternoon. And don't underestimate these. Some of them could be locally severe. I do think by Thursday, most of the activity ends up moving down the coast, probably from southern Maine down into Virginia and maybe North Carolina. Finally, let's look at the South Central U.S. and our risk for severe weather starts to climb here this evening. But really tomorrow is the day that I'm more concerned with. Take a look at what happens here in the afternoon. We could see major hail and strong winds anywhere here in northwestern Texas, all the way over to the Fort Worth, Dallas area here by evening. And this threat continues through the night. It's the same areas that get hit. Houston is going to avoid this, by the way, fortunately, after what happened last week. But I don't think Dallas, Fort Worth, or Wichita Falls, or Abilene does. Pretty quiet today and tonight. It's tomorrow when things are going to get very active here. Mid-afternoon, west of the Metroplex, and then evening along the I-35 corridor. It looks like our most likely time for severe weather. There'll be more on Thursday that I'm not showing you as well. Here's a look at the big picture. I'm going to talk about tropics, but here is our hurricane-like system. Pressures dropping to 985 millibars. That would be a Category 1 hurricane if it were tropical. And then wrapping cold air in, bringing us a late season snow in Manitoba and Northwest Ontario. No, thank you. But a very intense system here. The Northwest sees high elevation snow. If you're planning a trip to Yellowstone, you're going to get snow the next couple of days. And then that system moves through and follows the same places here for Friday. We're probably going to have some more severe weather Friday in some of these same areas, although I don't think it'll be as intense. And then moving to the eastern seaboard, and the pattern stays active next week over the Ohio Valley, over the Tennessee Valley, and over the Carolinas and Mid-Atlantic, and probably Texas and the South Central states as well. Very active over the next couple of weeks. In the tropics, we're relatively quiet right now, and take it while we can. The Indian Ocean is the hot spot. We still have Tropical Storm Iali here. That is off of the coast of Kenya and Tanzania. It's aiming for Somalia, but it is expected to weaken. It hasn't weakened yet, and I'll show you that in just a second, but it is expected to do that. The Atlantic's pretty quiet. We have our trough here off the Florida coast. That produced a foot of rain in parts of the Florida Keys yesterday. I saw about a foot in Marathon fell in just 12 hours. And that moisture is unfortunately not going to leave. So those of us in the Bahamas, Eastern Cuba, and especially Haiti and Dominican Republic are in for a very wet time here with major flooding potential as we get later into tomorrow and early on Thursday. You can see that in the Caribbean, our trough has now dug down, and nothing organized at this point, but a lot of rain is coming over the next couple of days. The islands are pretty good right now. We have southwest flow aloft, meaning strong wind shear. We are going to see some of this moisture from Africa eventually making its way over to the islands towards the end of this week and over the weekend. So it will get wetter, but I'm not expecting any organization. And Mexico is hot and dry, very hot. That's going to be warming up the Gulf and Northwest Caribbean. But we do have 2 flare-ups off the coast that don't look like they're going to intensify into anything. We've talked about the hot water. Nothing has changed. I didn't bring up the El Nino, La Nina, but we have finally moved below the 0-degree mark heading into that La Nina, which of course means a bigger threat for more storms in the Atlantic Basin and maybe some more intense storms, especially with this warm water that's in place. You can see, though, I have been talking about maybe some early season development here. This is later tomorrow, and then by Thursday night and Friday, low pressure spins up between Hispaniola and Bermuda. It could get a name. The first one being Alberto, but you can see it doesn't look super tropical. It's kind of got a subtropical look to it. It's going to lift northeast towards Bermuda and then kind of kick out to sea. So we may get a short-lived storm here, but it looks like it's going to be on the weaker side. So a better chance in the Western Caribbean towards the beginning of June, we may start to see some development here. But with Central America being here and with this being more than a week out, the certainty level is not super high. I do think we're going to have early storms. But right now, things are delayed a little bit from maybe what it looked like a few weeks ago. And again, that's not a surprise to me. Look at all the rain that's expected over the next 16 days. We're looking at over a foot here in parts of Hispaniola, over 2 feet over parts of Central America. Eastern Caribbean and the Gulf are going to be pretty dry, but the islands are going to pick up a few inches of rain. Here's Iali. Got a little bit of an eye now off of the Kenyan coastline. It is eventually going to get this wind shear from the southeast to kill it off. But it has overachieved at least for another day. You can see the models show significant weakening as it approaches the Kenyan-Somalian border, right at the equator where we typically don't see stronger storms, but there will be some heavy rain coming for the coastal sections of East Africa here. Here's our forecast showing that winds should die off, and it should be a depression near the coastline here of southern Somalia as we get into tomorrow evening. And that is it. But I appreciate you all's time today. I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please consider becoming a subscriber. And as always, I thank you, but I give all the glory to God who has called me to do this. As a Christian man, I just feel that I can't hold back the good news that Jesus Christ has died for us to live eternally with him if we choose to believe. And that's what drives me every day, no matter what I feel, to continue to pour into other folks and to hopefully be a blessing to others. Colossians 3 says, "If ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on things on earth. For ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, shall reappear, then shall ye also appear with him in glory." And I feel like this is such an important passage in that we spend so much time obsessing about things we have no control over, things like money, jobs, health, other situations, relationships, things here that are on earth, that no matter what happens, if we tell God what our problems are, He's going to solve them for us. We need to really just tell our problems how big our God is, because as Christ comes again, we will appear with Him in glory. And that is something that cannot be proven until it happens. It's what you have to put your faith in. You've got to believe that because of all of God's promises, that we were created by Him so that we can truly see the miracles that are being done on earth through Jesus Christ, our Savior. They've already been done. Go back and read the book of Acts if you are a Bible reader. They will continue to be done, but nothing's going to happen on our time. It's all on God's time. And that is wonderful because it teaches us some discipline. It gives us the ability to look out for one another, to serve one another, and to continue to believe in the unseen. And to just stop and listen to the word of God, not just try to figure things out for yourself. Because if you do that and you continue to do that, life may be good for you now, but things are going to hit. Storms in your life are going to hit. And the only thing that's going to stick with us no matter what happens is that promise that Jesus is coming again. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I will be happy to pray for you no matter what your situation is right now. I am praying for the safety of those in the path of today's storms and the next few days as well. Believe me, this looks nasty. I don't want to scare folks. I feel like you've got to prepare, but there are things we just can't control, and the weather is certainly one of them. So I hope you all have a blessed Tuesday, and I look forward to talking with you again soon. See ya.